you wanna try and get as close to possible as the correct list price so that you don't rack up days on market, get the 4.5% less on your original price. You'd be better off going straight to the right list price. You're gonna end up saving yourself tens of thousands of dollars. So pricing has never been more important than it is right now. Today's February 1st, which means we've now got all the data that we need to look at the month of January and understand what's changed. So I've got my computer open, let's dive right in. The very first thing we're noticing is that month over month, the month of January, the market is actually up a little bit. It's up 1.56% for everything that's sold all the way like Mississauga, Oakville, Burlington, all the way down through Fort Erie, all the Niagara region, Brantford, like everything is up 1.56%. Now the reason I put that in air quotes is there's so few sales at this time of year that our month over month data isn't gonna get me that excited to think that the market's gonna suddenly rebound like so many people in my industry think. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna talk about the stats today and I'm gonna give you guys my perspective on where I think the market's headed. Now, if you wanna watch a full video, you can click on the link that's floating around this video right now to see me do a really deep dive talking about things like interest rates. How's that going to affect prices as inventory goes up in the spring? What does all that mean? So if you want a deeper dive, that's the place to check it out. Right now, let's dive in and talk about this month's stats. So like I mentioned, the market is up and you can see looking at this all ITSO, this red line down here is what we're looking at, okay? And the reason it's so low is we're looking at the sales price. What is the price that things are selling for? So we can see that the average price in the GTA went from $640,000 for every type of property, okay? Single family, townhouse, condo, semi-detached, in every single price range. The average price was $640,000 by the end of December. And now that we're done January, the average price point is $650,000. So that's where we get that 1.56% increase in the market. Here's a couple really interesting things. That is like house prices going up $15,600 on $1 million purchase. So if something was worth $1 million in December, in January it's worth $1,015,000 essentially, okay? That's an easy way to think about it. Or on a $500,000 purchase, it's like $7.5 grand. Now the reason I'm not giving that a lot of credit is because if we take a look at the actual number of sales that are happening, you can see it's still really low. We don't have a lot of sales actually taking place. And believe it or not, you can see these other local regions, like going more specific, like Niagara, Oakville, Hamilton, you can see just how few sales are happening each month. Like in all of Hamilton in the month of January, there's 240 homes that sold. Condos, houses, townhomes, everything. So not a lot of data to work with. This is what I want you guys to pay the most attention to as we go through this. I'm gonna start to talk about some of the trends that I want us to pay attention to, not just in the monthly detail when we show these stats, but at the more global level of what's actually happening year over year at the same time this year every year. And what does that mean for us here in this market? Let's do that for a second. Let me zoom out and look at the sales price over the longest time frame that it's gonna let me look, which is 2010, okay? And I'm gonna get rid of all these other areas. Actually, the only reason I wanted to show you this area for a second was to show you that Oakville is actually still down, okay? It did not see a big increase at all. So you can see Oakville, it's like up by $800, okay, as an average price point. So it's just flat, it's the same. So it didn't see the same growth that we saw other places. And the reason I wanted you to see that was I wanted you to see that each area is different depending on, you know, where we're looking. And you can see Hamilton had probably the biggest increase. Hamilton's up 8%, which is actually a pretty big increase. But again, there's not a ton of sales. There's only 240 sales to look at. Okay, so let's zoom way out and look at our furthest time horizon here in terms of price. And I'm gonna get rid of our other little sub neighborhoods. So we just look at the market. We're just looking at the market saying from 2010 all the way till now, what are we noticing with prices? Here's the biggest thing I want you guys to take away from this. If we go back to March 2020. This is March the 13th, the Friday the 13th, where we announced in Canada that we had a global pandemic with COVID, okay? So after that, you see the market dropped way off in April. Then we started a process of giving out money pretty shortly after, and everybody just started going crazy buying homes. And interest rates were at an all-time low, and we're printing money and giving it away to people. We're making it free to borrow more money. And you see this huge change in prices that is really dramatic. Over here, the curvature of prices is fairly linear. And then once we introduce all this stuff with COVID, we see like a very exponential-like growth curve that if we kept this up, we'd all need to be billionaires in about the next 10, 15 years to be buying houses, okay? Because that is how dramatic this growth curve is. When you look at Warren Buffett's income over time, it looks like this. It's a hockey stick, a very exponential growth curve. That is what this pricing looks like if it kept up at this pace, okay? Unsustainable, impossible. Make sense? When we look at what happened, we see the market going all the way up until February, where the Bank of Canada starts to publicly announce that it's going to raise interest rates. And interest rates didn't actually start getting raised until July, which is when the decline in prices actually started to soften quite a bit compared to the announcement of it. Now, the other thing we had at the end of February is we did have Russia and Ukraine conflict. And then I'm sure that caused a little bit of fear as well. I remember feeling it in the market at that time. But the real big shift was the announcements that, hey, we're gonna start making borrowing money very expensive. So keep that in the back of your mind as we look at this, okay? We can see prices have been coming down, okay? And the other thing that's going on here is from a new listings perspective, you can see that the market is a trend every year. So when it comes to new listings, here's the data on this, okay? New listings coming onto the market is what happens every single year. So there's no data to report there. Look at this, it's like clockwork. This is like what I would call the heartbeat of the market. It happens every single year. The lowest number of homes that get listed is in December, okay? And the height of the market is May pretty much every year, with a couple exceptions where maybe there was a year where it was like April. COVID was a bit of an exception. If I go back here, I think April 2010 was the most listings. It's usually April or May, that's our spring market, and it's, for the most part, it's May. So guess what's gonna happen over here? We're gonna see more homes get listed heading into May, okay? Next piece of data for us that's going on this month. Homes for sale is rising despite a bump in last month's price. So we had a price bump in September before a continued decline. So if I go to homes for sale, okay, we can see that the number of homes for sale is rising. And again, that's also true every single January off December. Look at this, going back, it's always December's the lowest number of homes for sale, and it rises, it peaks about May, and then it drops off over the fall market into the winter. It's like clockwork. And what we're noticing here is this: the number of homes for sale since 2010 has been declining and trending downward. Here's what's interesting. After everything that just happened with COVID, low interest rates, we saw the number of homes for sale get really low. Now we're seeing that jump back up. So imagine what would happen if the number of homes for sale on the market starts to follow an upward trend, where we start to see more homes for sale on the market. That would give us more inventory. So what I'll hear a lot of people saying in my industry is, Jake, or hey consumers, we have this huge crisis with houses, and therefore, because we've got this huge crisis and everybody needs homes and we don't have enough supply, it'll keep causing prices to go up. Well, the exception to that is the fact that people can't afford what they could afford before. Buyers can't afford what they could afford before because interest rates were so low. And then we were also giving out money. So these things drastically can change the game. So I anticipate seeing us as we head into February, March, April, May, we're gonna see the number of homes for sale hit a new high over the last few years, okay? You can see we're already higher in terms of homes for sale than we were in June 2020. So I anticipate that's gonna keep going up, because look at last year, right? February last year was the height of home prices. And you can see here, everybody had a little bit of FOMO. They were seeing that happen and everybody started selling, and then they weren't able to sell their houses, but they were listing them. And we saw a huge inventory surplus of homes that were both being listed and not selling on the market. This is helping you guys hopefully look more broadly at market data, not just look at the month over month data, but look at like the big picture of like, what's the big economic trends sweeping across Canada. Now, next, the number of homes actually selling, so the number of sales that were taking place, were the lowest it's been in more than a decade in December, and January stats are only slightly above. Check this out. If we look at sales, we can see over here, December 2022, we saw 2,900 sales. If I go back through time, there's no time in the last 10 plus years that we've seen that few sales actually happening. That's a big shift in the market. We're talking over a decade and we haven't seen sales volume this low. And guess what? January is no exception. In January, we had just under 3,100 sales happen. And if I go back all the way to December 2018, we didn't even have that few sales taking place, okay? So that is a very, very low number of sales happening. And I anticipate as we head into the spring, we're gonna continue to see relatively low number of sales compared to the year over year or going any year back into the past at that month. And this is really telling me that there's gonna be a trend from my perspective of less houses actually selling, more inventory stacking up, and it's gonna be more and more of a buyer's market as we head into the spring from my perspective. Now for days on market, let's take a look at these stats. We can see days on market just keeps going up. Days on market from December, we saw there was 28 days on market, now we're 29 days on market. So just 1 day on market longer. Again, this goes back all the way to like December 2019 in terms of how long we're spending on market. And you can see the most time that houses spend on market is usually in December, January, because you list over the holidays, you end up racking up a whole bunch of time on market. And we can see that here in January, we're following that trend, but we're getting back to like 2018, 2019 levels, okay? Pre-pandemic levels. If we just imagine that the market's going back to kind of pre-pandemic times, it should look more like this. Really slow, steady growth, all right? We still have had a lack of inventory in the GTA going back to 2018, 2019. We've had low inventory for a long time. So I anticipate we'll see things smooth out quite a bit. Month supply is growing slightly. So if we take a look at month supply, we can see it's going up a little bit, but it does every single January. And we talked about this earlier. Last couple things we'll talk about. I know we're going deep on looking at the big picture, but more and more, I want you guys following this channel to think big picture. And if you haven't checked out the video that I referenced earlier about the latest interest rate announcement and how I think you should look at this data, I want you to go watch that. It's a 26-minute deep dive that will make you, with everybody you talk to, really intelligent about your understanding of interest rates and of how that's gonna impact where the market's gonna go. And again, all of this stuff, guys, is hardcore data combined with my opinion and my foreshadowing of where I think things will go. I could totally be wrong. That's absolutely fine. I'm making some assumptions, but I'm also backing it with a lot of data to give you guys some perspective. When we look at percent of original price, you can see that in January, things were selling for 95.5% of the original price that they were listed at. So if a house was listed for $1 million in January, it sold for $955,000. And then if we look at the percent of list price, we can see that if you listed for $1 million, you sold for $971,000. So here's what this tells me. The last thing you want to do is overlist your home in terms of price. You want to try and get as close to possible as the correct list price so that you don't rack up days on market, get the 4.5% less over here on your original price. You'd be better off going straight to the right list price. And if you get a little bit less, you're gonna end up saving yourself tens of thousands of dollars. So pricing has never been more important than it is right now. Guess what, guys? Over here, for the last 2, almost 3 years, pricing hasn't been very important at all because everything was just under list, hold offers, call it a day, okay? So you can see here we've had a big drop off. We are really, in terms of pricing, we're kind of back all the way to 2015. Where we saw 2014, where we saw these 97% numbers, all right? Price per square foot, this isn't really that important, but this is a good gauge for you when you're thinking about your home as an average to give you an idea of what the value of your home might be. The way we think about square feet, really simple. Square foot is all of your home above ground. It doesn't matter if you got a fully finished basement that's a walkout and is amazing. At the end of the day, when we're talking about square feet, we price it from ground level and up. So even if you got a walkout basement, you're like, Jake, one of my rooms is above ground, it's still considered a below grade or a +1 bedroom. So if you got 4 bedrooms, you got 1 in the basement, it's a walkout basement, it's still a 4+1 bedroom home. And if your home is 2,600 square feet and you got an extra 800 square feet in the basement, it would be 2,600 plus 800. And if I was trying to do a calculation on the value of my home, I would go 2,600 times 445. And to give you some perspective, let's just do the math on that, okay? It says 1.157 would be the value of your home. Now I would want to drill down after this and look at the specific neighborhood and get more specific, but it gives you at least just a really quick rough ballpark of what homes are selling for. Let's take a expensive area like Oakville. If I just type in Oakville, let's see what the average price per square foot is in a place like Oakville. You can see it's much, much higher. So it's $681. So if I have that same 2,600 in Oakville and we said it is $681, now that number is more like 1.77. Okay, big difference. And then the other way that we would zero in on that as realtors and be more specific is looking at things like caliber and quality of the finishes, comps in the neighborhood, etc. But this is a great way for you to just really quickly get a perspective on price. Let's see how Hamilton fares with that average. Hamilton's tracking a little bit above, and again, it all depends where. So 534 in Hamilton, and then we could zero in even more and go, what if it's Hamilton, but it is single family homes? We can see that changes prices again. So you want to zero in, really understand, but this gives you just kind of a quick rough idea. And last thing to show you guys, dollar volume amount in sales, okay? So this dollar volume of houses that are being sold or traded amongst people is closer to, again, 2019 pre-pandemic levels. So my biggest takeaway today, the market, while it's impossible to predict sales prices because it's all speculative and we're just guessing where the market might go in terms of trends, the market is entirely predictable in a couple ways. When it comes to new listings, check this out. It's totally predictable. Houses are going to be the fewest number of them for sale in December, and more than likely the most of them are going to be the most that are going to be available in the market April or May. This happens every single year since 2010, even during COVID, okay? We can see the market was going up in March, it was going to peak in April, and then things dropped off, and then they still ended up peaking in June, 1 month later. So still really consistent. And that same year, December of 2020 was still the lowest number of homes for sale. It's because we got 2 weeks of holidays, right? So that is totally predictable every year, no matter what, which also means the number of homes that are actually for sale is going to be predictable pretty much every year, month over month, meaning December is going to be the lowest, and then May is probably going to be the highest, okay? And you can see even as these waves are changing in terms of the averages over time, it's still pretty much the same months of the year that the most number of homes are for sale. You can see every year, even when the numbers are low like this, May's still pretty much the peak, and over the summer, there's the most number of homes on the market for sale. And lastly, months supply of homes. All these things are saying that every single year, the month of the year is predictable in terms of which months are gonna have the fewest homes on the market and which months are gonna have the most homes. Allow that to guide you in your thinking when you're thinking about when should I sell. My personal preference is you want to be for sale when there's less homes for sale because there's less competition. And you could say, well, Jake, doesn't that mean that there's also less buyers out shopping? I would say the most motivated buyers are the ones that have to buy when there's the fewest number of options for them. Because remember, people typically have a 60, 90-day window that they need to go find and buy something, especially in this market where people are selling first or they're trying to kind of line up their buying and selling. You really have a small window of time. So optimize for being competitive. Be in a market where there's less going on. If you guys enjoyed this video, we have a full channel that we're building up of month-over-month market stats. You can go check them out, watch them. And if you haven't watched an announcement video, I'd highly encourage you to go click on that, check it out around this video. And as always, if you guys have questions, you can pick up the phone, give us a call. All of our information is there below. And we so look forward to helping you guys. Our entire goal is exceptional service and clients for life. We'll see you real soon. Cheers.